Today we're going to do a comparison of the significant differences between a Glock Gen 4 and a Glock Gen 5. Now I said significant differences, so I want to talk about the things that actually make a difference to the end user. If you look online, I've seen some people said there's 20 differences between the Gen 4s and the Gen 5. Some people that say there's 35 differences between the Gen 4 and the Gen 5. Honestly, I didn't take the time to sit here and figure out everything that they changed and the exact number. But I don't care about everything they change. I really just want to talk about the things that actually matter to the end user. If there's something internally, like I think there's some internal change that they made to make it more reliable, well, Glock is arguably the most reliable pistol on the market already. So I think the end user is not going to really notice any difference. It's still going to be just as reliable as it always was. But some of the other things, there are some things that they've changed that I think are good and that the end user will actually notice, and that's the things that I want to talk about. Alright, so we'll start off with the lower receivers here. Right here is the Gen 4, here's the Gen 5, and we'll start off with the bottom with the magazine well. Now these don't look exactly identical. This is one of my competition guns that I've had for a while, and I have a little grip plug in there. I haven't put one in the Gen 5 yet, so kind of ignore that, even though that looks slightly different. That part of it's the same. The magazine well themselves on the Gen 5 it's flared. If you can see that, it's flared open as compared to the 4, where there is no flare. Now that will help you reloading. I think if you practice reloading and you're doing dry drills and things like that, that little flare on the magazine well might help you if you're off by just a little bit. But if you think you're going to get a Gen 5 with a flared magazine well and all of a sudden you're going to be this, speed demon with your reloads, that's not going to happen. If you're practicing, it gives you a little bit bigger margin of error, but if you don't practice, you're still probably not going to be able to reload very fast. But as you can see there, if you can tell how that's kind of flared out, and with the Gen 4 here, there's no flare to it. It's flared just enough to give you a little bit of extra margin of error. It's not flared so big that it would make it hard to carry as a concealed carry pistol. So there you got, first thing is you got your magazine wells there. Another thing about the magazine well here is this. Right here on the Gen 4, there's no cutout. On the Gen 5, you got that cutout. And this is another important thing with reloading. When you go to reload, your finger generally is resting on where the portion of the magazine where the bullet would be, and when your finger basically just kind of points to where the magazine well is. And that little space there lets you start to insert the magazine, and your finger's got room to not kind of get pinched in there. So your magazine gets started in the magazine well, and you can complete your reload. With the Gen 4, you don't have that. And I've had times where I've kind of pinched my finger right here, or this portion of the mag well kind of got in the way, and I've screwed up my reloads because of that. Now I practice a lot of dry drills and I'm pretty good at reloading. I can, anywhere from 1 1/4 to 1.5 seconds at the most to do a slide lock reload. So I'm pretty good at reloading, but that little cutout there, I can see that making a pretty big difference in me not having that fumble where I get my finger rather pinched in there. So I really like that. I think that's a good thing for your reloads. Alright, next thing here on the lowers are the finger grooves. The Gen 4 has the finger grooves, which you can see right there, and the Gen 5 doesn't. Now to some people this is a big deal. I know a lot of people complain about the finger grooves and their fingers didn't fit exactly where they needed to fit, so they didn't like the finger grooves. Me personally, I don't care. It doesn't bother me one way or the other. I grip the gun the same way. I don't really feel much of a difference, if any of a difference. But I know that is a significant thing for some people. Some people really can't stand those finger grooves, and that's a significant upgrade to have those gone for some people. Another upgrade here in the lower that we have, in the lower receiver, is you have a ambidextrous slide stop. So right here on the Gen 4 you can see, and then put this down. On the Gen 4 you can see right there, there's your slide stop, and it's only on the left side of the gun, which means it's basically very easy for right-handers to activate. On the right side of the gun there is not a slide stop, so a little bit more difficult for lefties to use that. The new one is ambidextrous, and as you can see you got one on the right side and one on the left side. That's pretty much it to that. Pretty easy. You just take your locking block off and that whole piece will come right out, so nothing really significantly more difficult about taking the gun apart. It's pretty easy to do. But that's pretty significant, I think, if you're a lefty and you want to do slide stop reloads with your thumb on your strong side or your master grip side. That's going to help you do that. I know there's some internal stuff here within the trigger group. Again, we're not going to go over that because I think to the average end user that's not going to really matter. The gun is still going to be just as reliable as it always was. I think the trigger on this gun is a little bit better than a 4. It's a little less gritty, but it's still a Glock trigger. It's not some high-speed competition, you know, 3-pound trigger. It's still a Glock trigger. It is what it is, just maybe a little bit cleaner. All right, so now we'll move on to the upper. Like I said, we're not going over every little detail. We're just going over the things that I think are significant to the end user. So here I got the Gen 4 on this side, the Gen 5 on this side, and if you can see the safety plunger right there on both of these guns, there's some significant a significant difference to the geometry of it, and that's supposed to be part of how the trigger, what's made the trigger better. And again, I do think the trigger is better, a little less gritty. Again, it's not a 3-pound competition trigger. It's still a Glock trigger, but it does, to me, it does feel better. There's a noticeable difference. Right here on the barrels, see if I can get it to focus. Hoping you can see. Right here's the Gen 5. If you can see that right there, there's that target crown, or like a crown rather. So the barrel, the barrel's kind of recessed, if that makes sense. And on the Gen 4, you don't see that. Anybody knows anything about precision, like rifles? Generally, that's the barrels are made like that. The muzzle's made like that so that it's protected. If the bullet leaves the barrel, and there's any kind of slight imperfections, scratches, any damage to the muzzle end of the gun there, of the barrel, you know, the gases that are pushing the bullet out the barrel are gonna be uneven, and that's gonna affect your accuracy. So this is more modeled after like a precision rifle type barrel with that crown right there, and the Gen 4 is not. So I could see how that could possibly make a difference if you're rough on your guns, you're banging the thing around. If you don't, you know, you're not careful about stuff, possibly you could maybe damage your barrel, and that little might give you a little bit of extra area of protection. Me personally, I've never had a problem with the Gen 4s, but that is something that I think is a worthwhile improvement. Supposedly the Gen 4s are supposed to be mechanically accurate out to like 50 yards. They're supposed to be able to shoot 4-inch groups. Now that's not really something that the average end user is gonna benefit from, I think, because I think most people can't shoot a 4-inch group at 25 yards, let alone 50 yards. But supposedly this is more of a match grade barrel on the Gen 5s as opposed to the Gen 4s. Again, I don't think that's going to really matter to the average person, but I do think this little kind of barrel crown thing they got going on, I think that is a worthwhile update. All right, so we got magazines here. You have a magazine right here's the, let me switch them around. Here's the Gen 4, here's the Gen 5. Biggest difference right off the bat is the follower. You got a yellow follower, I'm sorry, yellow. There's an orange follower on the Gen 5 magazine. It's probably the biggest, most obvious thing. There's a slight difference to the geometry of the base plate here, if you can see that. Gen 5 is on this side, Gen 4 is on this side. Put them side by side, there's a slight different geometry to them. But they both work. So Gen 4 and the Gen 4 works. Gen 4 and the Gen 5 works. If you switch it up, take the Gen 5 mag, put it in the Gen 5, it works. Gen 5 mag and the Gen 4, it works. So they are interchangeable. I really do like that orange magazine. It's a nice bright visual indicator that your magazine is empty. Other than that, pretty much a standard Glock magazine, nothing else too fancy. Now there are additional differences between the Gen 4 and the Gen 5. For instance, if you look at these guns right here, this one right here with the fiber optic sight is the Gen 4. The other one is the Gen 5. As you can see, the Gen 4 is a very boxy, square looking upper receiver there, and the Gen 5 has it's rounded. The edges here rounded. The sides of the upper there are rounded as compared to the very boxy and square Gen 4. Now, like I said, I was just trying to talk about the significant differences. That's not really significant. My Gen 4 fits in all my, my Gen 5 fits in all my Gen 4 holsters, so it's not like you need to change holsters. It fits, it works great. Zero problems with it. That's not really something significant. It maybe looks cooler, adds a little more style to the normally plain Jane, boxy, ugly Glock. But again, I buy Glocks because I want a gun that works. I want a gun that's reliable, a gun that's easy to maintain, a gun that I can work on, you know, easy. I'm not into the fancy, pretty, write my name on the side of the gun type deal. So I don't really care that it looks pretty or fancy. Those are the upgrades that I think are a significant improvement to the end user. Everything else, although it may be an improvement to the gun, is stuff that the average person you're just not going to notice. You know, like the match grade barrel, 4 inches at 50 yards. I mean, like I said, hell, I know people that can't do that at 10 yards, right? So the average person is not going to probably notice that. But it is a nice upgrade. Now, personally, for me, the reason I bought a Gen 5 was because I had 2 Gen 4 Glock 19s. One I was using in IDPA competitions in the CCP division, and one I was using for everyday carry. The one I was using for everyday carry was just straight factory. Didn't change anything on it other than the sights. The competition gun, however, though, I put an aftermarket trigger in there, aftermarket sights. You know, you can see I cut the beaver tail here. So I got the beaver tail, but the back strap doesn't run the full length. So I made a few modifications. Nothing too crazy, but I made a few modifications to it. My carry guns, I don't like to really modify anything. Change the sights, that's great. Everything else just... So what I did was I took my Gen 4 that I was using for everyday carry, and I turned that into a backup competition gun. And I'm getting on planes, I'm flying to other states to compete, and I'd hate to get there and something goes wrong with the gun. Even though Glocks are pretty reliable, when you start putting aftermarket triggers in them and doing various modifications, you could have problems. So if I have a problem, I'd rather have another gun to just finish the competition with than rather try to be an armorer in between stages. So I made that second Gen 4 that I had my backup competition gun, and since I came out with the Gen 5s, I bought the Gen 5 just as my standard carry gun. So with this particular gun right here, if you can see, I got the Tragicon night sights. Those are the XRs, the one with the skinnier front sight. I like that a lot more than the standard ones. But other than that, I haven't done anything to this gun. I just put a different pair of sights on there, frog lubed it up. Eventually, I will put a grip plug in there. But other than that, I'm not doing anything to this gun. I don't like to modify any kind of carry gun. I think you get the most reliability when you just leave them in their standard factory configuration. Rather than spend a bunch of money on an aftermarket trigger, spend that money on ammunition, go out there and shoot the damn thing, you know? Or do some dry fire and get used to that trigger, rather than make a bunch of modifications and possibly make the gun, you know, less reliable. Alright, so I know there's a lot more changes between the 4s and the 5s, but I think those are the significant changes that the end users are going to actually see maybe some benefit out of. A lot of the other internal things that they changed, most people are never going to notice. If you were, you know, if you didn't really look at the gun and I handed you a 4 and a Gen 5 and you shot them, other than the Gen 5 trigger maybe being just a little bit better, I don't think you're not going to hardly be able to tell the difference. Just those things we talked about, I think, are what's significant as far as, again, to the end user. Although I really do like the Gen 5s, I wouldn't replace, if I already had a Gen 4 that I liked, I wouldn't replace it with a Gen 5 unless I had a reason to. Like for me, I was trying to make that second Gen 4 that I had my backup competition gun, so then I wanted to buy the Gen 5 simply for that, for an everyday carry gun. But if you have like a Gen 4 that you carry every day for self-defense and you're not having any problems with it, I would just stick to that. I don't think there's really a reason to upgrade unless you have a reason. And do we really need a reason to buy another gun? Hey, remember to like and subscribe to this channel. You can also check us out at 3631tactical.com. We do CPL classes, we do some law enforcement training, and we do some other firearms related training. Just check out the website if you're interested in that. Thanks for watching.